Nero, the most powerful man in the ancient world, was once seen strolling through Rome's bustling forum with a striking new companion, his wife. But this was no ordinary bride. Draped in silken jewels and dressed to dazzle, she captivated the crowd's attention, yet whispers followed them everywhere. Because the truth behind that woman was chilling. She had once been a boy named Sporus. What Nero did to him stands as one of history's most disturbing tales of psychological and physical torment. This isn't just another story of Roman excess or imperial decadence. It's a haunting journey into how absolute power can twist love into obsession, grief into madness, and transform a human being into a living doll, forced to live out one man's darkest fantasy. The name Sporus might be unfamiliar now, but by the end of this story, his tragic fate will linger in your mind long after the video ends. If you're fascinated by the hidden, often brutal truths behind history's greatest figures, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? It's incredible to think that across different continents and centuries, we're connected by a shared curiosity about the past. Now, let's uncover the forgotten story behind Nero's twisted obsession and the boy forced to become his empress. Nero wasn't always the tyrant history remembers. When he took the throne at just 16, many Romans believed a golden age was dawning. The young emperor seemed different. He cut taxes, poured money into grand public games, and even stepped onto the stage himself, performing plays that delighted ordinary citizens. It looked like Nero might be the leader the empire desperately needed, but power has a way of changing people. Behind the youthful charm lurked a growing darkness. As Nero's reign continued, paranoia crept in. Imagine I'm the ruler of a vast empire of 60 million people, knowing that everyone around you secretly wishes for your downfall. Isolation settled in. No one dared to contradict him, challenge him, or question his decisions, not even his closest advisors. By 65 AD, something inside Nero had cracked. The promising leader had become erratic, unpredictable, and dangerous. His mind, once sharp and ambitious, twisted under the weight of his absolute control. And it was this broken emperor who set the stage for one of history's most chilling stories. But what pushed Nero over the edge? It wasn't just politics or paranoia. It was a love so intense, so obsessive, that it would consume him and everyone around him in ways no one could have imagined. Poppaea Sabina was everything Nero thought he wanted, and more. Stunningly beautiful, fiercely intelligent, and ambitious enough to match his own grand dreams, she was the kind of woman who commanded attention wherever she went. Where Nero's lawful wife Octavia was quiet and reserved, Poppaea was vivacious and bold. She didn't shy away from the spotlight, she thrived in it. What began as a typical Roman scandal, a secret affair, quickly spiraled into something far more dangerous. Nero wasn't just attracted to Poppaea's beauty, he was consumed by her. Ancient historians describe his behavior as increasingly erratic and possessive. He would fly into furious rages if any man dared to glance at her for too long. Guards were posted around her constantly, supposedly for protection, but really to monitor her every move. Nero lavished Poppaea with extravagant gifts, jewels from India, silks from China, perfumes from Arabia, draining the imperial treasury just to prove his devotion. But even this wasn't enough. He began to reshape his entire world to fit her, divorcing Octavia in a shocking move that cost him many supporters, then announcing his plans to marry her. By Poppaea in a lavish imperial ceremony, his obsession isolated her from everyone but those who owed their power directly to him. Nero wasn't just in love, he was possessed, and he was willing to destroy anything and anyone to keep Poppaea close. Everything came crashing down in 65 AD, on a day that would change Nero's life forever. The details vary depending on which ancient source you trust, but the result is chillingly clear. A violent argument between Nero and a pregnant Poppaea ended in tragedy. Some say it started over Nero's late nights at chariot races. Others claim it was about his obsession with theatrical performances. Whatever sparked the fight, it escalated quickly. Poppaea, carrying their unborn child, dared to criticize Nero, accusing him of caring more about his public image than his duties as a husband and father. In a terrifying rage, Nero struck her. Some accounts say a single brutal blow, others describe a sustained attack that left her bleeding and unconscious on the cold marble floor. Imagine the moment Nero realized what he had done. the man who commanded legions, worshipped as a god by millions, had just destroyed the one person he claimed to love. What followed was a scene historians call one of the most pathetic in imperial history. Nero, overcome with grief and horror, begged Poppeia's forgiveness, pleading with her to live as if his power could even hold back death. He summoned Rome's best physicians, promising fortunes or threatening torture, desperate to save her. But it was too late. Poppaea died within hours, along with the child she carried. The empire lost not only an empress, but a symbol of hope. In his grief, Nero refused to follow Roman customs. Instead of burning her body, he had it embalmed, placed in a tomb grander than any before, declared her divine, and established a cult in her honor. For days, he spoke to her corpse as if she could hear him. The entire imperial court was fools, asked to join in this surreal charade, referring to Poppaea in the present tense and leaving her seat empty at banquets. Anyone who dared suggest Nero move on faced exile or worse. It was during this strange, dark chapter that Sporus entered Nero's life, and the nightmare truly began. Into this tragic and twisted world stepped Sporus, a young freed slave, likely no older than 14 or 15. Born into servitude within the imperial household, he was educated and trained for administrative duties, enjoying a rare privilege for someone of his status. But all of this meant nothing compared to what Nero saw when he first laid eyes on Sporus. What caught Nero's broken mind wasn't Sporus's intelligence or skills, it was his face. Multiple ancient sources agree, Sporus bore an uncanny resemblance to the late Poppaea, especially around the eyes and delicate bone structure. In a society that believed physical similarity signaled spiritual connection, this was almost supernatural. For Nero, devastated and obsessed, Sporus became a twisted chance at redemption, a way to undo the irreversible, to see Poppaea again, reborn in another body. The one problem, Sporus was male, but for an emperor who fancied himself a god and had spent months talking to a corpse, changing a person's gender was a minor hurdle. What followed was one of the most calculated acts of cruelty ever recorded. Nero ordered Rome's best physicians to perform surgery on Sporus, not to heal, but to mutilate, to forcibly feminize him. This wasn't just physical pain, it was a systematic destruction of identity. The procedure was brutal, dangerous, and irreversible. It carried huge risks: infection, blood loss, even death. Sporus was held down by guards as surgeons worked, his screams lost in the silence of the palace walls. Even if he survived, he would be forever changed, physically, emotionally, and socially. This was no choice. It was torture masked as transformation, a living nightmare forced upon a boy who had no say in his fate. After the brutal transformation, Nero announced something that stunned even the jaded Roman elite. He would marry Sporus in a full imperial ceremony. This wasn't a private affair, it was a spectacle worthy of the greatest emperor in history, designed to legitimize a nightmare. Months of preparation followed. Sporus was given a new name, Sabina, after the dead empress he was meant to replace. Imperial seamstresses crafted gowns that would hide what remained of his masculine features, while master jewelers fashioned ornaments that once belonged to Poppaea herself. These weren't just decorations, they were chains binding Sporus to a role he never chose. Every day, Sporus underwent lessons in becoming the perfect empress. Makeup artists taught him to feminize his face, using kohl to enlarge his eyes and rouge to soften his cheeks. Hairdressers sculpted elaborate hairstyles that required hours of painstaking care. But perhaps most torturous were the tutors who drilled him on feminine mannerisms, how to walk, sit, gesture, even speak in higher tones. Imagine the psychological weight of this forced performance. Each morning, Sporus woke to mirrors reflecting a stranger's face, a face he was ordered to inhabit, erase, and become. Every lesson was a reminder that his original identity was being wiped away. When the wedding day arrived in spring of 67 AD, the palace was flooded with imported flowers and illuminated by thousands of oil lamps. Musicians played traditional songs, servants offered the finest wines, and guests wore practiced smiles. To outsiders, it was a grand imperial wedding, but those who knew the truth felt a mix of horror and fascination. Nero treated Sporus as a true empress, granting him a household, luxurious quarters, and a retinue fit for royal sin. high. But behind the luxury was relentless pressure. Sporus had to perform perfectly, answering to Nero's twisted expectations, pretending to share memories he never had, playing the role of a woman he was forced to become. This wasn't just a wedding. It was the sealing of a tragic identity erased, a young life trapped in a relentless, cruel illusion. Sporus's life as Nero's empress wasn't confined to the palace walls. When Nero decided to tour Greece, flaunting his talents at festivals, Sporus accompanied him, presented to foreign dignitaries as the legitimate empress of Rome. Imagine the confusion and whispered questions among Greek aristocrats confronted with the empire's most powerful man traveling with a teenage boy dressed as a woman, demanding to be treated as his wife. But Nero's reign was unraveling fast. By 68 AD, his reckless excesses had pushed the Roman elite too far. Rebellions erupted across the empire, governors declared open opposition, and the Praetorian Guard turned against him. The Senate branded Nero an enemy of the state. When he fled Rome with a small group of loyalists, Sporus was among them, a living symbol of a regime in collapse. Nero's final days were marked by desperation and theatricality, but when enemies closed in, he chose death over capture. His suicide left Sporus vulnerable, a prize and a liability in the brutal power struggles that followed. What happened next was almost as tragic. Sporus became a political pawn, passed from one powerful man to another: Nidius Sabinus, Otho, and finally, Vitellius. Each kept him dressed as a woman, calling him by Poppeia's name, perpetuating the cruel fiction Nero had created. Under Vitellius, Sporus suffered the ultimate humiliation, forced to perform in the Colosseum, reenacting mythological scenes that involved violence and public degradation. For thousands in the crowd, this was entertainment. For Sporus, it was the final act of a living nightmare. Unable to endure further humiliation, Sporus made the one choice that was truly his own. He took his own life, probably by poison, sometime in 69 AD. Likely no older than 20, he finally escaped the grotesque theatre that had consumed his existence. Sporus's story remains a haunting reminder of the human cost behind imperial grandeur, a tale of identity erased, suffering endured, and the tragic reclaiming of agency in death. The story of Sporus is not just a forgotten footnote in Roman history, it's a chilling testament to the devastating cost of absolute power. From the moment Nero saw in him the ghost of a lost love, Sporus ceased to exist as a person and became a canvas for one man's twisted fantasies. Forced into a life of performance, pain, and humiliation, he was stripped of his identity, his agency, and ultimately, his freedom. But in choosing death, Sporus made a final, powerful statement, a refusal to be broken any further. His tragic end was both an escape and an act of defiance, reclaiming the one thing that had been denied to him all his life: control over his own fate. Behind every grand tale of empire and glory, there are countless human stories like Sporus's, stories of suffering, resilience, and survival that history often overlooks. Remembering him reminds us to look beyond the surface of history's heroes and emperors, to honor the lives forever changed in their shadows. So next time you think of Nero, or the might of ancient Rome, remember the boy who became an empress and the price he paid for a man's obsession